Ladies and gentlemen, this is TBP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and welcome aboard the Eastern Express. We're zeroing in on the Baltic Black Sea paradox, how Georgian Dream, the governing party in Georgia, is quietly becoming a relay station for two very unsavory clients of the West. On one hand, Russia, crippled by sanctions and strikes to the energy infrastructure. On the other, Iran, still under nuclear era and weapons transfer sanctions. Both have found a willing partner in Georgia. Now, what if your friendly neighborhood petrol station was secretly a backdoor for military oil? On this episode, we look at how the ruling party in Tbilisi isn't just flirting with Moscow and Tehran, but it's downright helping them shop for sanctions-free fuel. And to get a better glimpse of this, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
The United States very recently cracked down on Russia and imposed sanctions on Russian oil. This much-awaited decision brought with it high hopes of genuine pressure on the Russian economy. Yet there remain concerns about one of the most important problems that Western sanctions on Russia have been faced with.
There will presumably be people who will try to disguise their purchase of Russian oil, route it through third countries, transship it, and so forth.
Georgia is one such country. The Georgian Dream Party has become a key player in Russia's ability to evade some of the sanctions. Through the use of the current state of Georgian politics and the country's banking system, Georgia has reportedly become quite a lucrative middleman. In particular, the Georgian business sector and its rich elites have been making huge profits by re-exporting sanctioned goods. This in turn has made the Georgian economy very reliant on Russian money, and therefore Moscow's influence over the country has grown. The Georgian Dream and its enigmatic billionaire puppet master, Bedine Ivanishvili, have long been accused of pro-Russian sentiments. Western leaders claim that they are seeking solutions to these sanction evasion strategies.
We're stepping up our crackdown on circumvention. As evasion tactics grow more and more sophisticated, our sanctions will adapt to stay ahead.
But given that the problem concerns more than just merely Georgia, despite its importance, observers remain unconvinced that Europe and the United States will burst this little sanctioned bubble.
And now, let's zone in on the east-planning portion of our show. Georgia has become more than just a middleman when it comes to sanctions evasion for Russia. It has become a kind of hub for Russian partners. Iran is one such partner, and the scale of its presence in the Georgian business sector is staggering.
Russia and Iran have become very close partners ever since Russia invaded Ukraine and became heavily sanctioned by Western powers. Iran finds itself in a similar position, which is why it is not surprising that Iran is heavily interested in trading with Russia, as it can't with many others. Georgia is the place where these deals take place. There are reportedly nearly 13,000 Iranian companies registered in Georgia, and they are linked with only a handful of addresses, which points to sanctions evasion. Physical operations also apparently very rare in the case of these companies. These Iranian firms are using Georgia as a kind of transit point to bypass international sanctions that have been imposed on them. This has led to trade ties between the countries deepening as the Georgian market becomes filled with certain Iranian goods and products. What's more, some of these companies are reportedly connected to the Iranian arms industry, which would mean that these operations in Georgia could also serve nefarious purposes.
And now, let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Now, let's start with Russia. A new oil refinery at Kulevi in Georgia's Black Sea coast was inaugurated by the Georgian Dream associated interests, including a board chaired by a former Georgian economic minister. Interesting pick. A tanker from Novorossiysk delivered over 100,000 metric tons of Russian oils to that facility. This means Russian oil, under pressure from Western sanctions and drone strikes, is being processed by Georgia, giving Moscow a potential safe haven for its crude. By stepping in as a processing outlet for Russian oil, Georgia is not just a bystander. It is actively enabling Russia to circumvent energy isolation. Georgia surrendered a key plank of Western strategy, isolating the Kremlin economy. Instead, it is quietly monetizing the isolation by offering sanctuary. Georgian Dream's rhetoric of energy independence from Moscow rings hollow when you look at the facts. Now let's shift the focus to Iran. Georgia has long been touted as a gateway for Iranian goods to access Europe. Thanks to Georgia's free industrial zones, liberal company registration rules, and favorable tax regimes, Iranian business entities have registered thousands of firms in Georgia in recent years. And unsurprisingly, one of their main business ventures, crude oil and petroleum products. Iranian oil can flow into Georgia, be repackaged, or go through transit, and then access Western markets. Georgia's geography is crucial here, right between the Caucasus and Black Sea, with ports and pipelines sneaking through. With Western scrutiny mounting, it has become a geopolitical lever. Now, we've been saying that Georgia is turning away from the West and towards Iran and Russia. Now we see it as a strategic move and not happenstance. So how does Georgian Dream get away with it? Officials in Tbilisi claim the oil shipments are all technically legal. The company's ships and cargo are not under sanctions. And if you're Iranian or Russian and need to move money, goods, or crude, Georgia is increasingly open for business. This is institutionalized. Key Georgian Dream link companies and bank structures are all in play. The mixture of opaque ownership, maritime registers flagged as shadow fleet, and tax secrecy means the game is deliberately hidden from plain sight. And for Western governments, the lesson is urgent. Sanctions don't work if there are unsanctioned intermediaries like Georgia operating. The more Georgia deepens ties with Russia and Iran, the more it risks becoming part of the problem, not the solution. For the people of Georgia, this could mean long-term cost, reputational damage, economic blowback, and the erosion of democratic momentum. For Europe, it means a weak flank, a partner in name but a conduit in practice. The pipeline running through Georgia might seem innocuous, but in the shadows, they are fueling wars, enabling autocracies, and weakening the very sanctions the West hopes to enforce. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is Mamuka Mamulashvili, commander of the Georgian Legion. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, glad to hear you, glad to see you, and glad to talk to Polish audience.
Right. Today we're examining how Georgia is becoming essentially a hub for Russia to evade some of the sanctions. And recently there's even reports about a heavy involvement of Iran as well when it comes to using Georgia as a way to skirt a lot of these international sanctions. Can you help us understand how it came to be and what is causing the alignment of Georgia with these authoritarian regimes?
Oh, on this matter, I have several clear points I want to state, so it becomes absolutely clear in which direction current Georgian government is taking the state of Georgia. So, it's very difficult for soldiers who are defending sovereignty also for Georgia in Ukraine to face and to see whatever we see now. Russian and Iranian government are trying to see weak points where they can invade the country and use the country with pro-Russian government. So basically Georgia and Georgian government has allowed exactly those weak points, and that's why the question even exists about, if Georgia is whether, cooperating with Russia or not. So, Georgian people hate Russia and Russian imperialism more than any European country, because we faced aggression that Ukraine is facing now several times. And it means that Georgia has gone through all those problems, and Georgia faced exactly the same what Ukraine is facing now. So, the government of Tbilisi, in comparison to, Georgian society, is playing a very dangerous double game. And, that creates openings for Moscow and for Tehran also to move sanctioned goods. And it gets Georgia under, bad, function right now, because the society of Georgia is not divided into two parts, but Georgian government has absolutely different positions than Georgian people. When custom controls are soft, when oversight is selective, when leadership avoids clear pro-Ukrainian decision, Russia uses that space, of course. and Iran follows right behind it. This is not geopolitics. This is simple physics, where you leave a space for the enemy to crawl. They do it, and Russians are permanently using any space to invade and to get their interest. So apparently every drone and every drone engine that reaches Ukraine or even Poland, we have seen several times how the parts of Iranian drones were falling in European Union countries also. And when we see that, and we see a soft position of Georgian government, it clearly shows us that Tbilisi is not ready to cooperate with Europe. If Georgian government wants to prove it's not helping the Kremlin, they have to close all the loopholes and close them all, actually. Seal the borders and join the sanctioned trades, join the sanctions against Iran and Russia. So, in my opinion, Georgia is going the wrong way right now in comparison to Georgian society that is absolutely anti-Russian. Georgians are not neutral. My men have been fighting and dying for Ukraine and for democratic values from the beginning, not only full-scale invasion, but from the beginning of the war in 2014. So we can clearly state that Georgian society, and we are the part of the Georgian society, is totally anti-Russian, and Georgian government is unfortunately pro-Russian. Europe has no room for governments that wink at Moscow and Tehran also. Georgia needs to choose the side. Right. Georgians have chosen the side, and we have shown it on a battlefield. But
you mentioned earlier that there's a weakness within Georgia that Russia, Iran, and these authoritarian governments are exploiting. And if you can help us clarify, do you think that this is on the weakness of the Georgian government because they failed to react to what the Russia and Iran is doing within its own country? Or are there even more tacit complicity where the Georgian government is cooperating with these actors?
Russia did a lot to have a Georgian pro-Russian government of Georgia. They spent and wasted a huge amount of money to make the current government to be the current party to be at the power. So, in my opinion, they are just doing whatever Kremlin is telling them to do. There is nothing more or less. I'm just a regular soldier, and I have a right to say the truth. I'm not a politician, and I'm not afraid to say whatever is really happening in Georgia. So, today Georgia is doing whatever Kremlin is telling them to do. That's my opinion and opinion of most of the fighters who are fighting against Russia physically on a battlefield.
Right, and speaking of the fight against Russia, can you help us kind of elaborate a little bit? How do you think things will go from this point on? And your fight against these authoritarian regime, what's your experience?
Oh, no, I did not get the question. So how the fight goes on, you mean?
Yeah, like where do you think the trajectory of Georgia's involvement with Russia, and if you can help us give us a little bit of your experience on fighting against these authoritarian regimes?
Oh, Georgian society always chooses freedom, always chooses democratic values, and chooses pro-European direction. And as I mentioned above, authoritarian regimes like Ivanishvili's regimes that we have today in Georgia are trying to break the will of people. Unfortunately, today we see arresting of most of the opposition in Georgia, and it clearly shows Russian influence and the growing of Russian influence. European countries could be very much helpful in that, in setting up sanctions against Russian oligarchs that are today in Georgia with Georgian surnames. And, we need the cooperation with the European Union to be, to have our back more covered. That's what Georgian people are willing, and that's what Georgian people are waiting for, actually, for European countries to be more helpful and not just, helpful with words. We need some actions, we need sanctions, and we need the pro-Russian government to be sanctioned and to understand that, Europe knows that they are using, Russia is using them to move their interests.
Right. Well, paradoxically, because the situation in Georgia right now, it does seem like a country is straying away from the European path. But at the same time, it does seem like European support for the Georgian people is very important as well. How do you think the European Union should go about juggling both helping the Georgian people to stay on track of being more Western, more European, but at the same time not embolden the government doing what it's doing right now?
Even now, while we're speaking, a lot of Georgians are standing in the streets and protesting against pro-Russian government of Georgia. I think more, European, Polish, or any other European Union politicians should be getting to Georgia and, letting people know that Europe is with them. Mm-hmm. And that's very important for Georgians to understand that they're not fighting just for nothing. They should know, they should see the support, and nothing can show them support better than politicians going and standing with people and talking to them. Mm-hmm. Because regular people today are arrested in the streets, and unfortunately, Georgian government is trying to do and to make a model of Belarusia in Georgia, where, people cannot freely walk in the streets with flags and cannot stand in the streets. I'm not mentioning even Russia now. Belarus is, enough example for that. Mm-hmm. So, in my opinion, everybody should be consolidated, and we should act all together. There are foreign volunteers in Ukraine fighting for Ukrainian and European sovereignty together with Georgians, Poles, and others. And political society should be also consolidated and doing a fight. Without that, we cannot win this war.
All right, thank you so much for bringing awareness to the situation. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on the Eastern Express.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. Ukrainian businessman Timur Mindych is at the center of a major corruption probe that has shaken the country. He is a known close associate of Volodymyr Zelensky and has ties to several industries.
Mindych is a film producer and former business partner of Zelensky's, though the president himself has so far only responded somewhat positively towards the investigation. The Ukrainian president praised the, quote, effective efforts against corruption of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, or NABU. Timur Mindych himself reportedly fled ahead of NABU's investigations into one of his various properties. Zelensky has held close ties with the man up until at least 2021, so after he became president, when he celebrated his birthday at the film producer's home. The Ukrainian public is watching this probe very closely, as a few months ago Zelensky and his party had tried to strip Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies of their autonomy.
Ukraine has sanctioned Vladimir Putin's economic envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, and the sanctions were imposed on him for spreading propaganda and attracting Russian investments into key sectors of foreign economies.
Kirill Dmitriev was born in Kiev and is the current head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund. He is one of the key members of Moscow's negotiating team, which handles affairs of both the United States and Ukraine. He visited the US as recently as last month, amid Donald Trump's growing frustration with Russia's refusal to a ceasefire in Ukraine. Dmitriev has already responded to Ukrainian sanctions, sarcastically calling them an award on social media. He's not the only person to be sanctioned by Ukraine in recent weeks, as Kiev has also gone after other negotiators from Russia's team, as well as members of Putin's cabinet and government. According to a statement from the Ukrainian presidential office, the targeted individuals, among other crimes, had imposed pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian education in occupied Ukrainian territories.
Coming back to Georgia, Reporters Without Borders has added Georgia's ruling party's founder, Bizina Ivanishvili, to the list of individuals labeled as press freedom predator.
The reason for adding Ivanishvili to the list of press freedom predators is his powerful influence over national politics and therefore media outlets. Other individuals on this list include Russian President Vladimir Putin and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. This designation comes amid the European Commission publishing the EU's annual enlargement assessment, which held a scathing report about Georgia's prospects as a candidate state. The Commission noted that Georgian authorities have been going after activists, civil society, and independent media outlets in what has been widely seen as a strongly authoritarian turn for the country. Georgia has also been criticized for turning away from its former Western partners and instead opting to strike deals with countries such as China or Iran, who are also regarded as close Russian allies.
And that's all on this episode of Eastern Express. Before more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.